So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of our department and kind of how we sit in the city and kind of what our purpose is. So I'm a direct report to the mayor, and so she's my boss, and hopefully I do a good job and help everyone.
I'm rating you.
She is. She does a good job of giving me good feedback. So within the community development department, we have development services, and I would equate this is kind of our everything above ground. So we make sure that buildings we review the plans for buildings, make sure that they're done in compliance with code, that they're safe, that they have proper fire and sprinkler, electrical, mechanical, foundation, all of those things, so that the buildings that are being constructed in our community are safe. We also do the land development piece, so this has to do with utilities going into the buildings, any easements on the properties, making sure that everything that is being constructed is code compliant. We are also in this division, we had a contract model where we contracted out a lot of our inspection and our plan review. We're in the process now of bringing that all in-house. Because of our growth, Meridian in the past has benefited greatly from that contract model, but we're grown up. We're a big city. So our customers, particularly those in the development and building, want a higher level of service. The mayor talks about that. And so we're excited about that evolution in our division there in building services. So that's the one of the three legs of the Trinity, as we like to call it. We have planning, and Caleb is the manager of our planning division, and you'll enjoy Caleb's presentation. Very meaty, talks a lot about the future land use, our comprehensive plan. I think the mayor mentioned that in her presentation. Just a quick note on that. So the last time we did a comprehensive plan update, we were 40,000 citizens less than we are now. So arguably, a large majority of our community had no input into that plan. So the mayor council has been very supportive of us really accelerating that process. Usually we do it in a 10-year increment to accelerate that, to make sure that that document represents the community that we are now and planning for what community we want to be in the future. And a big component of that, and Caleb will get into this, is that community involvement. What do you all want our community to be? I think that's a big question that we're really looking for feedback in. And so you'll see, Caleb, again, we'll get into this, but just there's going to be a lot of public outreach as we develop this plan. And what does it look like? And where do we want to go? What uses do we want to focus on? Because as we transition from what used to be a more agrarian or rural type community to now a little bit more of a suburban, and then in the future more of an urban scenario, what does that look like, and how do we do that, and how do we make sure that our community is the community we want it to be, that premier community that we all moved here to enjoy. We also have under Caleb's division the CDBG program. So that's a community development block grant. So the federal government grants us money, and we deploy that in certain ways based on the criteria of that grant. So we use that primarily for improvements largely in our downtown, but other beautification and other projects. So it's a great program that we hope to expand in the future. And then Brenda Sherwood in the back here, she's our economic development manager. Helps us make sure that we maintain, retain business, grow existing businesses, and attract businesses to our community. And she has a presentation on that. So just to give you a little bit of a view of how community development works. You know, I like to think of it kind of linear. And I'll use a bad analogy, but hopefully it helps. It's kind of like the gopher and the snake, okay? So we have, when a business comes in, this is, you know, Brenda's kind of our first point of contact. You know, if they want to grow, if a person wants to start a business or grow a business, starts in economic development. And then as you can see, Brenda will help them find a place to be, if it's a leased space or if there's a piece of ground that would make sense for their business, she'll help them find that. And then this is when Caleb's group comes in. So if they do want to change a use of an existing building, or if they're going to build on a new parcel, maybe that land use needs to change to a different type. Let's say if it was a residential zoning, it may need to change to a commercial zoning, and Caleb can then help with that. And then you see, you know, it'll go through, you know, different stages here. So now you'll see business services come into the mix. So what exactly is that built environment going to look like? How does it become code compliant? What are the easements and the utilities like in that to make that happen? And then, of course, you can kind of see Brenda transitions out for at least the moment there, because now they're into platting and the infrastructure that's involved. And so, again, planning and building services has a big part in that. Of course, the entitlement process, and then on through the permitting and occupancy. And then Brenda comes back to make sure that business is doing well and thriving, and how we can support it from a community perspective. But just kind of a quick overview of how our group tries to maintain and grow our businesses in our community. And I think it's a fantastic operation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda, because she is kind of that first point of contact. Thanks, Brenda.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. They invited me not because the citizens said they wanted to hear about economic development, but to break up a little bit of the monotony with the budgets and all the numbers. And I have the best job out of everyone, I think, in this entire building, because I get the opportunity to work with businesses. And one day it might be a mom and pop shop that has always wanted a bakery all their life. And then the next day, you're working with someone that's doing augmented reality and growing and getting big contracts. It's an exciting place to be. It's always different. And so I'm very passionate about my job. What do I do? What are my roles? We talked a little bit about them. It's business retention, business attraction, and business assistance. And a business assistance can range from so many different things. When you come on board with economic development, you kind of have to be an expert of all the different programs that are out there, whether it's federal, state, or some of the local incentives, or ways to find assistance to train your employees. So you just kind of have to know everything and all the resources so that you can be that point of contact to help that business grow. Business retention, we touched base on this. This is so important. You know, when the mayor and I first talked and she brought me on board, we both agreed that what's so important to us are the businesses that are already located here in Meridian, because we know that 80 to 85% of the jobs that are created in our city are created by those companies that are already here. And that's really important. And so once again, we actually on a weekly basis go out and meet with our companies and find out, what are some of your issues? How can we be helpful? How can we be that resource? Now, like I said, in this brain here, I have a ton of different resources throughout different levels of government. But also just creating partnerships and networks. We want to make sure that the companies here know about the other ones. So the last question the mayor and I always ask, we say, you know, what is your greatest attribute of your business? And then her and I go out there, and that's what we say about the business. So that way we can get our companies working together. And then, of course, it only bolsters our attraction efforts, primarily because when I go out to recruit companies in, obviously, they're going to talk to other businesses. What do you think? How's it going there? So business retention ultimately is the best piece to make sure that your companies are all very happy. So it's a big part of our economic development program. And then business attraction. So this is the one that you hear about all the time in the newspapers, on TV. Paylocity is one that we pursued for probably almost a year. Brought the consultants out from Chicago, took the company. We actually didn't even know who the company was. Here comes all the executives, and it's confidentiality, primarily because, it's usually oftentimes competition. They don't want them to know where they're going. It might be a public company. So we spent a good week with Paylocity executives without knowing what company it is. So that's pretty common in my business. But when we talk also about attraction, we're not just kind of out there shooting the buckshot. We actually have targeted industries. As you know, we have great healthcare and sciences here. So we go after companies like that. ICOM was one that was recruited in. The Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine. It was a fabulous opportunity for us. And so we look for needed goods, services. What are we missing? What can we bring in? Entrepreneurs, if you don't know this, we have New Ventures Lab right across the street. We're using the old city hall to bring up new businesses. And so they have a place to kind of grow and get some assistance. In addition, new technologies are big. Augmented reality, Paylocity. One of the great things about Paylocity is that the technology that they're going to teach at Paylocity to their employees is kind of the foundation of what they'll need to move up to a higher technological job. So it's a great foundation. They'll have about 500 people when they're at their full expansion. And then key factors, of course, it used to be, they were always looking for incentives, but now it's workforce. It's like, are you putting that type of training and education into your workforce? So that's a big one right now. It's a kind of an issue right now because our unemployment is about a little under 3%. So it is difficult for them to find workforce. And then, of course, pipeline. You have the colleges. We have ISU. Now we'll have ICOM. So there's going to be a great pipeline of workforce that's coming out of just Meridian. Available sites, they want it ready. And infrastructure. Infrastructure is a big one. And one thing I didn't put on there, of course, is demographics. So if you're one of those that calls me on a regular basis that I want IKEA or Nordstrom's, demographics is a big one. They want at least 1 million in the valley. So you have to hang tight. One of the things that we thought maybe, since we've been talking about some of the tools in the toolbox, the Urban Renewal District at 10 Mile. That is a TIF district, and how that basically works is when the district is created, the taxes actually, I'm like sitting here and going through this again. We always joke about this because I'm like, the mayor's like, you kind of make it a little more complicated than it needs to be. But the taxes kind of freeze at that point. And then the increment, as the taxes rise every year, that increment goes back into the property and it goes into the infrastructure. So we, in 2007, created a plan because we wanted mixed use. We wanted to see an area where people could live and work right in that same area. So that plan was put into place. We didn't want to see a bunch of big box stores off of 84. But because of the cost of infrastructure, it was kind of pricey for the development to happen there. So what we did is we created that TIF. And it's the Urban Renewal District. So that money is basically going to pay for your infrastructure, your sewer, your fiber, a variety of things. There's 300 acres. At full capacity, there will be over 2,000 jobs there. Meridian and Paylocity, both, those are probably almost about 1,000 jobs just out of those two companies. So a lot of jobs out there. Approximately, I always like to say $500 million of private investment in that area. I thought it just went dead. And then another bonus, they'll have a lot of pathways, entertainment, so it'll be a nice epicenter right in the center of Meridian. And then some of the businesses, as I've mentioned, Meridian, Paylocity, and Brighton Corporation will be going out there as well. So it's going to be a great area for obviously a lot of jobs. It's an area close to where people work. The mayor says this all the time. We're not really going to get out of traffic, but if we can bring jobs closer to where you live and good paying family wage jobs, that's really what our goal is.
Brenda, real quick too, just so you guys can understand, this will tie back to Todd's presentation about the tax revenue and tax income. If you're putting $450 million of private investment in the ground, all of a sudden our value that he talked about, that assessed value, just got bigger. And so that levy that is now levied on everyone is proportionally less because of that. So it's a good thing for a vibrant community to develop in these ways so that the collective impact is lower. To Brenda's point, you have a more livable community because people are closer to those high-paying jobs as well. So it's a great project.
Exactly. And then finally, one of my roles, of course, is doing marketing. And I love this. And the mayor and I say all the time, we can stand in front of a company looking to relocate here. But, you know, they expect us to say wonderful things. We're passionate about our jobs. We love our community. But what's really great is when I can get a lot of the businesses involved. And when ICOM came here, we started working with some of the doctors to get out, you know, just information about the health sciences in the area. And so we asked each of them, what do you like about living in the valley in Meridian? And this video that we're going to show you next is what came out of that. And you'll see they're all so passionate about being a part of the community. So thank you for your moments.
Meridian, Idaho is one of the nation's fastest growing cities. Here, you'll find a comfortable, tight-knit, energetic, and welcoming community.
There's a reason why it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. We've got our outdoor activities. We have our family life. I think that is probably one of the main attractions of Meridian is it's a family. So people who come here feel welcomed immediately.
You know, a spring day can involve the decision, do I golf or do I kayak or do I water ski or do I snow ski?
Backpacking trips are spectacular. The days are long, so no matter how long your workday is, there's always sunshine to be able to enjoy after the workday.
I think most of the people who are here see some of the compensation that we receive as being able to live in Idaho and work in this environment and be able to play in this environment is something that we really feel strongly about.
Every time I go to Bogus Basin and ski, I think, I live here. I didn't have to fly to Colorado from Arkansas to get here. I live here, and it took me 30 minutes to drive here, so it's fantastic.
Meridian also offers the same amenities you would expect to find in any major metropolitan area, with one distinct difference: accessibility. You aren't likely to find traffic jams, long lines, or crowds, but you will find fine and casual dining, family fun, nightlife, brew pubs, shopping, 19 city parks, one of the nation's best water parks, excellent hotels, and the list goes on.
I love our parks. I love the village at Meridian. It is phenomenal, and it really did bring our community to that next level. Roaring Springs Water Park, one of the best in the nation. Between that, Big Owls, Jump Time, there's something for everyone.
I know world-class places within 20 miles that in any other state, they should make a state park out of it. But here it's just that place. Leslie Gulch, Gooding Little City of Rocks, Swan Falls area, the Owyhees are a wonderland.
Idaho, and Meridian specifically, offers a lot. I mean, it's a great place to live. I'm somebody who moved here just 3 years ago because of the quality of life. So if you think about outdoor activities, and if you think of being able to get to work in a short period of time, I mean, I'm from my door to my hospital in 20 minutes.
You can be at the airport in 15 minutes. You can be on the river in 15 minutes. You can be into the foothills in 15 minutes. So anywhere you want to go, it's a pretty easy place to get to from here.
Join us in Meridian, Idaho, the perfect location to experience everything Idaho has to offer.
So I'll be around if there's any questions. Thank you so much for coming.
We're going to go ahead and turn it over to Caleb now. He's going to sit you guys because he's got kind of a pretty intensive slide deck, but we'll answer any questions too as we go along, okay?
Good morning. My name's Caleb Hood. I'm the Planning Division Manager. I was kind of tweaking my presentation a little bit just based on some of the initial responses you all had to the mayor's opening question. So that's one of the reasons I was going to sit, is because I was taking some notes and hopefully address some of those questions that you brought up. But if not, hopefully leave some time at the end. We just got an hour, so I think there's a lot of things that maybe you want to talk about here. So I'll kind of go through my spiel, but feel free to interrupt. If on any of these slides you want to talk about it at that point in time, that's great. But again, I hope to leave some time at the end. Maybe just a little bit about myself. First few people anyway started out with who they are and why. I was born in Nampa. My folks moved away to Washington State, so I really kind of grew up in Washington State, but I had family here, aunts and uncles, grandparents. So over the years, I've seen Meridian change. I have fond memories of going to the Hungry Onion, going to the country store when it was on the corner of Meridian and Overland. My grandpa would get a pack of smokes, and I'd get a candy bar. We'd go get baling twine and go back out to the farm on Lake Hazel and Black Cat, those types of things. So I've seen it change, right? And I have those fond memories of coming back in summertime and for Christmas and Thanksgiving and those types of things from Washington State. But anyway, so that's just a little bit about me. I hope to make this a little entertaining and exciting. I don't have any professionally produced videos or anything like that, but I hope this isn't a boring presentation. Again, let's make it interactive. Feel free to interrupt as we move forward. I want to build a little bit on what Cameron did and just talk about our division structure, so that planning division structure just a little bit. Talk about the comp plan, what it is, where we're going with it, talk about growth and development, and then into transportation. So with that, I think we'll jump into kind of the meat here. So the planning division, there really is kind of two subdivisions, if you will. A little bit of a pun there. We do process plats or subdivisions on our department, but we're one team as well. So we have a long range and a current planning side. So one of the things I wasn't planning on talking about this morning, but again, I kind of bobbed and weaved a little bit, was based on some of your comments and the process with current planning. So I've added a couple slides here, so bear with me. They're not super high tech, but some talking points there. I'll talk about that process here in a little bit in a minute there. And then again, everything under the long range transportation, long range side we'll talk about except for CDBG today. So that's just a little bit about what we do. What we don't do, and again, we've talked about, this has already come up a little bit in previous presentations, but we don't do roads. There are two different transportation agencies. Actually, we'll talk about that. There's some other transportation-related agencies in our region as well. We've talked about libraries already. Idaho Power, I don't believe, has come up so far, but we obviously aren't Idaho Power either as a city. Schools. Some other things that kind of get overlooked. I did hear Brenda mention fiber, but a lot of those things, we aren't an irrigate. We don't control irrigation, gophers, telephone service, or cemeteries. There are other districts that control those things. But just a little bit about what we don't do. So then the comprehensive plan. So why do we plan? Essentially, it's because we have to. The state has told us, and all cities and counties in Idaho, that It's mandated that we plan and implement those plans. We are limited, though. We are only given the authority, essentially, to plan and enact those plans with the powers that are expressly granted through the legislation. So we are somewhat limited in how we can plan for our communities. Essentially, I'm not planning on spending a whole bunch of time, again, even on this third bullet. You guys have talked a little bit about property rights and some of those other things. But what it really comes down to is police powers. Health, safety, welfare. It's a large umbrella, pretty subjective, but that's largely what it comes down to is community good and making sure that there's some level of equity and that people aren't getting hurt or killed. So that's a lot of what we do, again, at a pretty high level. We'll talk a little bit more about community visioning and some of those things on the right-hand side of this slide as well. Here's where I kind of called the audible and added some slides, again, based on some of the initial feedback. So a lot of times what we get questions on or have to explain, people get confused on a little bit, is the difference between the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next several slides. But we've developed a handout. There were some last week, at least, on the back table. Feel free to take one. It has this table or this matrix that you see on the right-hand side. Essentially, in our comprehensive plan, we have designations you'll see on the top side of the matrix. That does not equate one for one with a zoning district that you see on the left-hand side of this table. And that's where some people get confused sometimes. Is it said it was low density, I was expecting R2. Well, with a low density designation on the comp plan, a property owner, developer can ask for an R2 or an R4. So this is meant to help say, it's not, again, a one for one, or because it's this designation on the map, and I'll show the map in a second too, this is the only development I should expect as a nearby property owner in the future. Maybe just a little bit more on that. The designations, the names, and I realize I've truncated there, but those aren't set in stone. The comp plan is a living document. It does change from time to time. There is a process where property owners, our society changes, market changes. There's a process to amend the future land use map, so there's no guarantees that if you looked at it 10 years ago, it's going to be what it is today. It does change. However, the onus is on that property owner to justify why a change is appropriate at this point in time. What are the reasons that we shouldn't hold true to the vision that was developed as a community 10 years ago in that scenario? So we don't just give away changes. Cameron mentioned that a little bit, but there are reasons from time to time that we do think a change to the map is appropriate. But again, land use and zoning gets a little bit tricky, so we're trying to kind of educate folks so they understand that a little bit better and the correlation between annexation and zoning. So here's that kind of in a visual form. On the left-hand side is everything in color is future City of Meridian city limits. So that's what we call our area of city impact. So this FLUM, future land use map, is a part of our comprehensive plan. And it at a high level, I know you can't probably read the legend with all the colors, but essentially there's 4 different designations. The yellows are residential, greens and yellows are residential. Parks and schools are also green, but that's the darker green. So residential, commercial, which is red, and office, purple. Industrial, which are grays, and then we have a mixed use, which are kind of the brownish colors. But that's kind of at the high level, what the colors represent is residential, commercial, industrial, and mixed use. And then on the right-hand side is zoning today. How many of those acres or parcels are actually within the corporate boundaries of the City of Meridian? We are Swiss cheese-ish. You can see there's county parcels, in the middle of the city. The McFadden piece right up here on Cherry and Meridian Road. That's in Ada County. It's not in the city. So we haven't taken the approach, and in fact, that property, the city couldn't initiate an annexation on it because it's so big. But it does create some challenges with services, right? Technically, the sheriff's department would respond if there's an incident there. So there is some inefficiencies in sort of how we've historically kind of grown out before growing in first. We're trying to grow more from the inside out, but there are some challenges just with past development patterns and going forward. So again, on the left, kind of ultimate future long-term build-out. On the right is kind of who we are today with zoning. Bill touched on this a little bit, and we didn't coordinate Bill Nary earlier, but I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but I have the slides before he addressed it. Legislative and administrative. So at the administrative level, we process things in our department, and you really don't get to see those or take part in that. You can ask for those types of things, but it's not an open to the public type of process. They're administrative things. We approve sign permits, fence permits, those types of things, over-the-counter types of applications. On the legislative side, like Bill said, that is more open to the public. There's a process for that. We have to follow the laws associated with that. Quasi-judicial, again, he touched on this. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. On the left-hand side are, again, the ones that you may have been in this very room before participating in public hearings regarding some of those types of applications. So just want to kind of clarify that too. There are administrative or staff level applications, and the ones that either go to the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. Again, I don't know that I'll spend too much time on this, but LLUPA or LUPA, it's a Local Land Use Planning Act. It basically, again, it's dictated to the cities and the counties that anything we do has to be in conformance with and comply with adopted policies and plans. Again, who gets to determine that? The mayor and council, with input from the public on is this consistent or not with the plan. So again, a lot of subjectivity in that process. So again, out of this, sorry, it's not super high tech, but just a quick overview of how we interact. Primarily with developers, but we also interact with just the general public through this process. Kind of the first step is we have a pre-application meeting, and sometimes it's plural here because a lot of times we'll have multiple meetings with the developer. They come in, hey, I'd like to do this. Is that possible based on the future land use map that I showed and kind of my vision for the property? You know, are we marrying up with that vision, or we'll kind of explain what we envision on that property? They throw out a site plan. We bring police and fire and other service providers, public works. Here's where our services are and what we would expect to happen with a project, sidewalks, working with our transportation agencies. Assuming they have something they're fairly comfortable with, they would then take that to a neighborhood meeting. So right now, our ordinance and in fact state code has noticing provisions. We require a 300-foot notice. So from the boundaries of whatever property is proposed to be developed or redeveloped, they have to send a letter to those property owners inviting them to a neighborhood meeting and give those property owners 5 days advance notice at least. Have a meeting, get that initial feedback. The intent there is to get that feedback, and that if any issues show up, they consider those and potentially change what they originally had proposed to mitigate some of those concerns. So those same people aren't coming to the public hearings and expressing these concerns. That's the idea anyways. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, and the developer says, no, this is what I need to do, and they move forward with whatever they originally had. Then they, again, if they're comfortable, there's some risk involved there, right? But they submit an application to us, we share it with other agencies, we transmit it through the city clerk's office, give them about 30 days to review and respond back to the assigned planner in my office, who then reviews all of the information they receive back, reviews the site plan against our codes and ordinances and the comprehensive plan, and writes a staff report that goes to, again, the City Council, Planning and Zoning Commission for review and approval. That's obviously made available to the public. And I'll show you here, or you can access some of that. So the other thing that happens then next is a public hearing. The noticing piece of that, just this last year, for about a year now actually, we've been putting those public hearings on Nextdoor. So if you don't have that application, it's an app you can download on your iPhone or handheld device, whatever, and you can receive those notices as well. We also put them in the newspaper, which again, about a year ago, we recognized not a lot of people go to that section to read it, so we're trying to reach out. It's also on our website, so I just wanted to kind of show you real quick, hopefully. So this is linked to the city's website, so it's got the most recent public hearing, and then you can go there and you can click this and it'll have all the information about the application. Some of them, depending on where it's at in the process, will have application material. Some of them will be far enough along where you can read the staff report and those types of things. The staff reports are generally generated a few days before the hearing is held. So you can get this through the city clerk's website. So if you go to meridiancity.org, go to city government, city clerk, there's development application links that you can go and again, download, and I'm not going to do that, but you can see these hyperlinks that will then open up the information. Or if you just want to see what's going on in throughout the city, this has all the upcoming planning and zoning and city council meetings, a brief description of what they are, where they are, and what the proposal is.
So the signs that you see on the side of the road, you can find that information up here? The big
Correct.
sign saying notice of public.
Yep, and I skipped over that, but yeah, so that is part of the noticing requirements here. So we do, again, newspaper, and then I skipped over this too. A postcard is also sent to those same 300 people that were notified of the neighborhood meeting. We're also sent it to HOA. So if you're in a subdivision that has an HOA, we send it to your property manager or whoever's on record with Ada County as being the HOA contact. We notice them as well. But yes, the 4x4, 4 foot by 4 foot black and white signs you see, public hearing notice, our contact information is on there, as well as in these next door notices. So all public hearings are posted on the site. Occasionally, there's a little 11 by 17 yellow ones that you get, but those aren't very common. They're for like daycares and things like that, more in residential areas, kind of smaller sites. So yes, that's part of our process to notify the public. Kind of transitioning a little bit, getting back a little bit back on track to what I initially was gonna talk about, more of the comprehensive plan. This is the current comprehensive plan and how it's laid out. There are 17 required elements per state code that we address. We address more than what's required. We have things like some other community design type of things that maybe go a little bit further than what is required by state code. I'm not going to go through all of these. I would encourage you, though, to get familiar with this document. It is, again, it's a guide for the next 10 to 20 years. Maybe don't spend so much time right now because we're going to be updating it, as Cameron mentioned. There's a future land use map that is also a part of it that I've already talked about. So just a little bit of history on it. Lupo was first adopted in 1976 at the State House, and then so Meridian took a couple years, to develop our first comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 1978. We did a significant update in 1993. Our current plan is from 2002 largely. That's why I've got the asterisk. So in 2011, we did a pretty substantial update. The document was getting pretty big, and so we basically took all the text that was backwards looking about who we were and are as a community and pulled them out into what we call an existing conditions report. And then everything that was kind of forward looking and policy based is the meat of the comprehensive plan that we use to review developments and, again, move our community forward. So it was, but again, the policies within the plan are largely from the early 2000s. That process actually kicked off in 1999, was adopted in 2002. So as Cameron mentioned, we've almost 2.5 times the amount of people here than when that was adopted. So we do annually update it, though. So it's not like it's outdated necessarily. It's just we haven't really had that outreach and public input opportunity for the last several years. There's kind of what that existing conditions report looks like. It is pretty cool. Again, it's kind of who we are as a community today. It says 2017, so roughly today. But it really is a neat document. Awesome graphics and just information if you're curious about demographics, who we are, those types of things. So I'd encourage you to access that on our website. I won't spend any more time on the future land use map, but that's what a lot of people want to jump to. What's my property designated? Is it commercial? Can I get rich on this? Oh, residential? Okay. Or what's going on next door to me? What's my neighbor's property designated? So that's a key tool again. So how's the plan used? It is aspirational. Again, it's not a blueprint, it's a guide. So it is, we do put, there's a stake in it. We have, there's definitely, we definitely back it, but it can change from time to time, but largely not huge shifts in how we grow and develop, shapes our community for the next 20 years or so, or a couple decades. Finds who we want to be. It does contain goals, objectives, and action items. So there's tables within each of those chapters that talks about at a high level what our goal is, and then gets down into more measurable, deliverable types of things. You can say, is this project doing this action item that reflects the goal of who we want to be as a community? And then it works in concert with some of the other things that Todd and others talked about today, like our CIPs and our long-range plans and those types of things for transportation. And then practically, primarily planning uses it, but again, as I just mentioned, it works with other departments and even other agencies to inform their projects. Like, for example, I'll talk about Compass in a little while. They look at our land use map to say, okay, are you planning for high density residential or commercial there? Okay, that's going to generate more traffic. Maybe that roadway needs to be 7 lanes instead of 2 or 5. So the demographics and the land use interaction there influences how ACHD and Compass plan and ITD plan for our roadway network as well. So the new plan. So this is what I'm most excited about. Just on Tuesday, the council approved a contract with a consultant, so we have consultant help to help reach out to you largely and help us do some of the analysis and keep the good stuff that's in the current plan, but help get that input from the public on how to make the plan more reflective of who we are today and how we want to move forward as a community. We do have a steering committee of about 20 people that will meet here middle part of next month for the first time, and then monthly going forward. It's about a 16-month process. We hope to have it adopted by the end of next year. Just a little bit on the main focus areas. So this is things that, again, I even heard it, in kind of the opening statements here. Strategic growth management in public services. The rate of growth, right? I mean, that's what people want to talk about. We're just busting at the seams. It just seems like it's so, fast, furious. And so really we want to have some metrics that we can tie in some of those public service levels of service into and review as a tool for the mayor and council when they're reviewing these projects. Say, hey, this roadway is already at a failing level of service. Do you want to approve this project next to it? Give them more of that information. They get some of it now, but we're really trying to develop almost a scorecard for these projects that says, hey, you know what, we can handle this. Or, you know what, no, this is really pushing our boundaries for the nearest fire department. They're already at 5.5 minutes of response, and now we're going even further out. We don't have plans to build another fire station for 5 years. Is this the best place or type of development to grow? So strategic growth management and public services, really maybe targeting areas to grow next rather than growing in all directions simultaneously. Are there a couple of areas we should really focus on? And if somebody proposes to grow in somewhere else, doesn't mean we have to say no, but we report that information. Hey, council, this isn't a high priority area. It's an expansion of our services. We really were trying to go here. You make the call, but again, then we're just trying to provide that information to the decision makers. Kind of ties in with transportation and economic development, but again, transportation, schools, economic development, like Brenda talked about, I mean, those are key factors. We want to make sure some of those targeted industries and things are being addressed and we're pulling in the right direction, the direction the community wants to go on some of those things. So I think I'm just going to move on because I'll talk a little bit more about transportation here in a few slides. So just quickly, again, about a 16-month time frame. We're just kicking off phase 1, the foundation, and hope to have it identified. Doing some interviews with community members, so if you're interested, we have some information that's just currently being developed. I'll actually have some handouts if you're going to Hillsdale Park tomorrow night, the grand opening there. We'll be there in the evening with a booth set up with some handouts with a link to the website for this project. And we have a survey going on, again, trying to establish values for the community. What do you value? What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you think we should be working on going forward in phase 1? And then kind of tying those values into a vision for the future that would be an iterative process back and forth between the community members. We're going to be at we city staff are going to be at a lot of events this summer. Again, trying to get information back from the public on where you all want to go as a community regarding just growth and development and change of the community.
Caleb, real quick. By a raise of hands, how many of you guys had that kind of growth-related question or have concern about that? Just a quick raise of hands. Okay. So this is what Caleb's talking about with this comp plan, these interviews, these surveys that are going to be coming out. This is truly your chance to engage in that, and just to give some fodder to that. That will become this plan. So I can't express enough how to empower you to participate in these things. Caleb mentioned the interviews. We'll try to get that information out to you. But if you are interested in that and that is a concern to you and you want to see how that happens going forward, this would be your opportunity to do that. So share the links, share it with your friends, family. We want that input because we can't develop this plan without your help. So, yes.
Yeah, so so the question was, how do you get the survey? So that is to be determined. Again, we just entered into contract on Wednesday, so yesterday, with our consultant. The council approved it Tuesday night. So they're working on that right now. So again, it's kind of stay tuned right now in development. We've been working sort of behind the scenes to get ready, but we aren't ready to roll that out yet. But yeah, it'll be on the website. Again, we'll be at events throughout the summer, concerts on Broadway, some of the events at Kleiner Park, the Saturday Market here, and again, at Hillsdale Grand Opening. So we'll have some more information we're developing right now with how you can be involved, a little more detailed than what I have on this slide, because we're working on it right now. But yeah, there's going to be opportunities. Again, I would check the city website, go to that. We're going to link everything back to this meridiancity.org, that /comp plan. So it may not be right there, but within a couple of clicks, you'll get to the most recent survey or the questions we're trying to get back and how to be. I will just mention on this third bullet here, the community listening sessions will be mid-June as well. I believe it's the 13th and 14th. That's Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you're interested, let me know. I've got contact information at the end. And we have our consultants here, and they have just like 3 or 4 or 5 questions, and then kind of an open-ended question if you want to provide some feedback to us on the community. So yeah, I won't go through all the events we plan to be at, but the point is we're going to try to go to the public at events you're going to be at. Make it fun, we'll have some candy, some games, something like that. A photo booth. We're trying to make it interactive, so people stop by. Please stop by and say hi and give us your feedback on. Do we want to take, this is on the agenda, it had a 5-minute break. Do we want to do that? Do we want to power through? Yep, okay, all right, okay.
All right.
All right, so moving on.
You got it.
So this is growth and development. Again, Cameron just asked, for a show of hands. So here's Meridian, 1920. Yeah, I know you can't really see it probably all that well, but that's basically everything north of, between Franklin and Fairview, that's Meridian. So less than, within 2 square miles, that were the incorporated city limits. Here is the city in 1990. That's 70 years' time. That's pretty good growth. That's 70 years. So yeah, definitely some change. Here we go to 2000. Kind of infilling, but also going out a little bit further down south. In particular, I go back and forth a little bit. 1990. 2000. 2015. So you can see, just the progression from 1920, 1990, 2000, 2010. So there's a big 2010 and then 2015. So, the mayor mentioned early mid-2000s we had a boom, and I've got a couple of slides that show that as well. But I just think that's interesting to look at, just particularly the last 30 years or so, looking at how much Meridian has just grown. That doesn't show you how we've grown, but just as far as land mass goes, how much we've changed. So current population estimate, this is just from last month, 106,000 people in Meridian. So that's an increase of over 8,000, although I wouldn't put much stock in that. If you look at 16, 17, and 18, we've certainly grown. But some of those estimates, again, there's some methodology changes in how they compass American Community Planning Association or American Community Survey, how they do population estimates. But we're pretty confident around 105,000 people or so in Meridian today, or at least at the first of this year. And I've got some other slides that kind of break that down a little bit more of how that compares with some of our neighboring cities and within the county as well. So just, we've got bolded there though, new residential permits for Meridian last year, 2,200 permits, over 2,200. So we're basically a third of the region's total residential permits. And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that and it's just a fact, right? That it's a lot. There's a lot going on in Meridian. I don't need to tell you that, but there you can see it. And again, I have some other slides that show that. And then, so that's twice as fast as Boise. So between Boise and Meridian, we're half of the valley, but we're almost a third of that in Meridian. So this is a little bit outdated. So this is 2016 numbers, but I think you can kind of see that just in bar graph form, kind of again showing how the rest of the cities kind of compare with general lots. So this is residential platted lots. 2016. Again, you can just kind of see the ratios. I'm not going to stay on this slide too terribly long, but just to show you kind of in proportionate share what that really looks like then to, again, some neighboring cities for 2016 lots that are platted within city limits. of a city, and then on the far left would be Ada County, so unincorporated cities within Ada County. Another one, again, kind of showing the same thing, Ada and Canyon County. So here's another one that's a little bit outdated at this point. It's from last year, but it still holds true today. Our housing stock is new. So if you look at how many homes built since 2013 and the percentage of our homes built since 2013, so just in the last 5-6 years, again, over a third of our homes are 5 or 6 years old or less. And how that rates to, again, other cities that are, again, the rate of new construction problems. I'll just kind of a quick aside, but related to this, Meridian's been one of the top 15 fastest growing cities in the nation for the past several years now. This is just another way to kind of show that with rooftops. For the first time, though, last year, you probably saw it in the news, but the state of Idaho was actually the fastest growing state in the nation for the first time ever. So that was kind of interesting for the state. So here's a little bit on historical trend line. So again, you can kind of see at the beginning of this, the mayor mentioned it, look at the numbers in 2005, and we cropped it off just because we didn't go too far back. But 2004 was right around those same numbers. If you look at, you think we were growing fast in 16 and even in 17, look at 2005. 4, 5, and 6, we were, the rate of permits that we were pushing out, almost twice of what we're doing the last few years. So it's kind of interesting when you look at that, how quickly and it's cyclical, right? I mean, we're in a boom right now. I think that's a little bit of what the difference was. It was right around 3, 4, 5, where we really had a boom. So 3, maybe 4 years in there. Here, it's really been sustained to some degree since 2012, 13. So 5, 6 years of that trend going up. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how long we can sustain that. But just that's the difference, I think, is that it's been a really long kind of sustained trend upward. Whereas, again, that middle of the last decade kind of session, it was a up and then kind of crashed. So where do we anticipate growing next? So this is, for us, again, I'm going to kind of keep this at a high level, not get into actual land uses of it. Is this commercial or industrial or residential, but just the areas of town where we see growth to continuing to occur. And so if you're curious, the number one driving factor, well, I shouldn't say that. Land price is going to be right up there. But availability of sewer service is going to be one of the biggest factors in how readily accessible and developable a property is. So any developer worth their salt is going to find out where that infrastructure is. How far do I have to bring the sewer and or water line to service my property? Because that's usually where you put a lot of the investment in. Everybody's got to build roads. You're going to have those costs regardless of what plot of land you choose to develop, but really bringing that infrastructure, and again, for development in a city, that's largely sewer and water. Everything else is largely the same as far as what, impact fees and those types of things. So here's, I'm gonna drill down a little bit further into these real quick. Obviously, market conditions, national level, interest rates, and those types of things are gonna play into some of what I'm gonna show you now. So take this a little bit again with a grain of salt, but these are basically
Caleb, real quick.
Yeah.
So just a note on this, I think, we talked about a lot of the things that we cannot control. Obviously, one of the services we do provide is that sewer and water. But where that's going to, like Caleb was mentioning, if you don't have sewer and water, it's very difficult to have, development. Very difficult. It's impossible, right? So that being said, and you probably noted from Todd's presentation that we are a pay-as-you-go type government. So that being said, there's going to be some real factors that start to, unless there's something else that changes, that starts to impede growth, just naturally, where that's pushing. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. The policy could change or we could do different things, but As it stands now, you see where these growth pockets are kind of heading. Without that infrastructure, that will be difficult. So I just kind of correlate maybe some of the public works talks you've heard, some of the finance that you heard today, and then also what Caleb's talking about with the planning. That's where these things start to collide.
So the other thing, before I go again a little bit deeper into some of these pockets, infill, right? I mean, that's one of the other kind of key future targeted growth areas. One of the concerns that a lot of property owners or developers, when they're looking at some of these infill pieces or the Swiss cheese within the city limits, again, you have neighbors. It may be easier for a developer to go on the fringe and develop something because there's cows out there, and they're not going to care that there's houses. They may care, but they aren't going to come here and participate in the process. So some of, buying the properties and infilling them tends to bring out neighbors. A lot of risk involved with that. I mentioned sewer and water and land prices, but there's also some more risk involved when you got more neighbors that potentially can come and tank a project or whatever. So, but again, that's something we are trying to, for efficiency of services, some of the things that Cameron just said, it doesn't make sense for our police officers to go right by a property that's within the county and the sheriff's office to also have to patrol that same area. So filling that in first, and so I hope to see some of that in the coming years as well. But these are kind of general areas of the city aside from that infill where we anticipate additional growth happening. So Southeast Meridian. Again, we already talked about Hillsdale Park and some of the things going out there with the YMCA and a potential library, and there's a new city park out there. Eagle, Lake Hazel vicinity, basically. I mean, it's not that. It goes all the way to Meridian Road. But basically, and again, take this with a grain of salt, 5, 10, 20 years. The point is something in here depends on market conditions and absorption rates and all that. But basically, this is how we envision kind of those areas happening. And then when the infrastructure comes here, this area going next. Some of what the arrows represent are sewer sheds. So the area kind of on the right-hand side of the slide, all those areas are, all that effluent from sewage needs to go back to our wastewater treatment plant that's at Ustick and 10 Mile. So the main line or the trunk line services that sewer shed. I'll kind of point out the lines a little bit. So there's basically topography. This line here splits this sewer shed from this sewer shed. So anything on this side of the property, they don't go over here. A new line has to be put in. And so I get quite this question, so I'll just answer it right now. It's a sewer project that's going on right now for the past several months now. If you've seen the construction going on right in this area, it's a city sewer line project that basically is going to open up this area and then this area and eventually this area for more development. With the Simplot old chicken coop farms that are now storage units, they weren't going anywhere, and so basically the development community and property owners south there said, hey, we need some help. There's bedrock, it's high, sewer lines got to go, gravity, right? So you got to get in the side of a hill basically to get your sewer line, so it'll get all the way back to Ustick and 10 Mile. So anyways, that's what that project is. So that's kind of what you see. There's really two different service areas here, but this is a pretty high growth area in the future anyways. So just over a couple miles then from there, near the 10 Mile interchange. So can kind of see that coming to fruition now with some of the things that Brenda talked about within the 10 Mile urban renewal area here. Other side of the freeway, and I anticipate seeing some more things in the next handful of years in this area. We've got utilities there. There's a new water line project that's planned to come in here, which then again opens up more growth kind of around the 10 Mile new interchange. I mean, it's a relatively newest one in the state, so seeing some new, more growth around the 10 Mile interchange in the coming future. And then lastly, kind of northwest. So State Highway 16, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but basically familiar with the Oaks project up here. That's a big project that's kind of in this area. We actually are entitled on both sides of the roadway here on McMillan, but seeing some more growth in this area because, again, our wastewater treatment plant is right here. There's a new lift station that was put online, right here, a few years ago. So this is another kind of high growth area in Northwest. So I've talked about residential quite a bit. I want to just focus a little bit more on commercial. So 36% increase in commercial permits. So it's not just residential. We are growing the rooftops, but we're also growing jobs. So that's good news. You want to have a balance there. when we're doing a pretty good job. More can be done. It's a, it's an initiative we, and again, particularly Brenda is working on. But a 49% increase.
Brenda, is that Paylocity right there?
Picture's a little
I
old.
think it is.
Yeah, this is at 10 Mile.
It's all built out now.
Yeah, yeah, this picture's a little bit dated from early this year. So again, last year's numbers, 2,800 plus jobs in 2017. Wage growth, you've probably been seeing some of that again in the news recently. We're still lower, part of the nation for overall income in Idaho, but there has been some wage growth, and Brenda already talked about unemployment rate and how historic lows there. She didn't touch on this too much. She mentioned industry growth, but here they are, kind of the top 5 industry target or clusters, or kind of who we are. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but she mentioned some of these before. There are the other ones kind of on the screen. And then some of the businesses that came online this last year. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but a lot of new businesses coming practically every day.
It's hard not to applaud that. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it just, again, speaks to our business community and, a lot of the economic development work that's going on. But we've got some incredible businesses that are growing. So it's awesome.
So again, another outdated, this was from a presentation earlier this year. This is ICOM. So at Locust Grove, right by the school district headquarters, their office is there at I-84 in Locust Grove. It's looking a lot better than this right now. So that's what that is. Again, Brenda mentioned this, but they're looking to open this fall. The reason I also put this on here, get some questions on this about what's going on there, just off of Locust Grove, Fairview, and Pine. That's where the housing's going in for these medical students. So if you're curious about all the grubbing and stuff that's going on there, it's more than that, but that's going to be their first phase, is to put in, and I imagine most of you have been through the roundabout there at Webb Avenue. That's really kind of two lanes. It's basically Pine. Occasionally you'll get somebody from the south coming into that roundabout, but they're building that north leg. So now you're going to have to pay attention as a motorist. They're building that out now, and that'll go up to the north to tie in with Fairview, basically across from the Sonic and the old Norco site there. So anyways, that's where the students for ICOM will generally be housed. There'll be student housing there in that area. So the village, again, probably won't spend too much time on this one, but obviously that's one that we're fairly proud of. We played a role in it. I'm not going to say this is a city project, but we did work closely with them and continue to work close with them on retention and attraction even. But they're doing pretty well. $500 million development there, so similar to that 10 Mile area as far as numbers go. But they continue to grow, and right at the busiest state interchange intersection in the state of Idaho, Fairview Eagle, going on there. So here's that a little bit more. We estimate about 40,000 jobs today in Meridian. In 2040, we anticipate 75,000. So you can just see, again, we're not just, if we're going to bring rooftops, we need to bring the jobs as well. I didn't bring some of the graphs, but if you look, it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Downtown Boise, that is kind of the heart of where the jobs base is for the valley. So if you're trying to commute in, again, I'm not saying anything most people don't know, but that's where a majority of the jobs are in Ada Canyon County. So we're trying to, again, it was brought up before, balance that out. Maybe now I don't have to commute downtown to Boise. I can live and work and play in Meridian. So bringing more jobs closer to where people live, and mixed use as well. Population, kind of same thing. This is just anticipated. This is through Compass. We work with them on, we don't have a crystal ball, but we just make some assumptions and come up with some population projections that help us anticipate the infrastructure we need for like long-range transportation plans and whatnot. So just to throw a number out there, it's on the screen, 2040, we anticipate 1,022,540 population in Ada and Canyon County. So 2040, over 1 million people in the two-county region, with over 150,000 people in Meridian. So again, we're at 106 now, another 45,000 people roughly by 2040. That equates to about 55,000 households, 30-some thousand today, and again, about 75,000 jobs. I will just point out real quickly, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but this is by demographic area. So the Swiss cheese areas are also included in Meridian. It's difficult to break those out, but so it doesn't skew the numbers too terribly much, but there is some county numbers that are included in that. Those are more demographic areas. Just to point out real quick, and then again, I want to leave some time for Q&A. I've been with the city 15 years now. Well, this summer it'll be 15 years. Fingers crossed I make it that long, another couple months. But I've seen a real shift, right? 15 years ago, about 35,000 people when I started here. We're double that, almost triple that now. We didn't have a lot of people participating. You know, again, the cows. No one is coming to public testimonies. Paramount, I remember that going through, you know, a whole section being, you know, developed, and there's largely no one that paid attention. Now you get, you know, a 50-lot subdivision, and this room is packed. And that's great, it's fine, that's how it should work. But there is a shift in how we as staff process these applications. Before it was greenfield, right? No one really cared. Private property rights, yeah, do your thing, it's your right, basically. Your family farmed it, this is your payout. You take your, you know, that transition happened. But again, we're seeing more and more people participate again, which is great. But we're seeing that transition where it does take more time and resources and effort all the way around to deal with it. That's what we're here to do, but it is a little more intensive. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, again, just in the interest of time regarding infill, but we've got about 30% of the land within the city limits that is largely undeveloped. So what that means is we've got some properties that are entitled. Again, Paramount, 2002, 2003 is when they originally got in. They're building the apartments now, 15 years later, right? So it takes these larger projects, numbers of years to go out. So there's projects like that kind of all over. I mentioned the Oaks up in Northwest. That project was approved 5-6 years ago. They have over 1,000 units out there. So it's a several year, depending on the size of a project. Same with kind of down south and the hill projects that are going on down there. So we have some land that are entitled or approved for development, but it takes time to build in the roads, get that infrastructure, and absorb the houses, build them, and then absorb them. So almost unprecedented growth, right? I touched on this earlier, so probably, again, just cruise through this real quick. Some of the challenges we've talked about, again, you guys have brought this up already, kind of that middle section of schools and roads. What we do as a city on the left-hand side, we think we do a pretty good job of keeping up with, you know, safety of our community, relatively safe, one of the best in the nation, as well as the state, as far as safety goes, and police and fire and parks. Just a little bit of a plug about this. Well, I'll just wait until we talk about transportation. And parks and recreation, we get high scores there too, again, for the services we provide. No one really wants to talk about the services on the right, but it's still something that has to be done, stuff that our CFO and city clerk and HR and all that has to be done. Some of the challenges, though, again, as you see, are kind of in the middle. I mean, those are the ones, not so much libraries, but that even, you know, came up as a topic. Those are the things that people really are clamoring for more, that the city, we play a role in that. I'm not trying to say we're off the hook, but we really don't control the provision of those services. And again, more on particularly roadways in a minute. So transportation, this is the last section, and then again, have some time for Q&A. So if you don't know, you do know, at least now, because we told you that the city doesn't control roads. A majority of the roads in Meridian are ACHD's purview. They are a roadway authority. They largely design, construct, and maintain the roads. The design and construct part, again, does happen through development. So developers also design and construct their local roads, their internal roads for their project. But once they're constructed, they are turned over to the Ada County Highway District, who maintains them. They also do roadway widening projects. So Ustick Road, that was an ACHD project, and Meridian, that intersection, that was an ACHD project. Pine, right now, that's an ACHD project. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, so so the question was, does it include sidewalks? Yes, so we have, so I'm a liaison back to ACHD and ITD. I'm just kind of city staff point of contact for that. We have put ACHD on notice that says, hey, complete streets. You can't just build travel lanes. We want sidewalks. And to that point, we've talked with the community, and basically the community prefers detached sidewalks. It's a safer environment. It's more friendly to walk, not right next to traffic that's going 35 to 45 miles an hour. So generally, we've told ACHD if we can detach that sidewalk, people are more comfortable doing that. Now, they're not always detached for various reasons. You have to buy people's houses or move poles or trees and things. But yes, sidewalks are included vast majority of the time in that, yes. And then there's ITD. So we had an ITD rep here too. Meridian has a lot of highways that run through us, as well as an interstate, obviously, right through the middle, basically, of Meridian. But Chinden, Eagle, Meridian Road. I'll talk about those in a minute too as I talk about priorities. And then Valley Regional Transit, a little bit more on that in the last piece of my presentation. And I mentioned Compass before. So Compass is what at the federal level is designated as a metropolitan planning area. Once you get over 50,000 people, the federal government requires you to designate a transportation management area and establish, we're big enough now, to over 200,000 people where there's an MPO, and Compass is our regional planning association. So I work with them and others here at the city. Their main charge is a long-range transportation plan, what they call Communities in Motion. They're actually working on updating that to Communities in Motion 2.0. So it's an update to what they developed for the horizon year 2035 to 2040. So it's a tweak in that version 2.0. But that's largely what they do. But it's evolving into more than just a long-range transportation plan. They're considering complete streets, transit, other things too at that level, even for our region, kind of looking at as for our region. The other thing that I wanted to just bring to your attention, Meridian does have a transportation commission. There are 9 members that are appointed by the mayor and council. She mentioned that earlier, that they appoint members to the various commissions of the city. We also have ex officio members. So we have ITD, ACHD, we have a city council liaison back to that commission. We have a mix of people that are transportation traffic engineers, people that own businesses, work at businesses, just have a general interest. We have a bike advocate. So those 9 members have varied interests and backgrounds, but they all care about the transportation infrastructure and network. We do meet the first Monday of every month in this room, 3:30. With Labor Day, we don't meet in September on the first Monday, but so they make recommendations to the council and ACHD. Main charges are speed limits, traffic concerns, bicycle, pedestrian, safe routes to schools, other priorities. So if you have something or you know somebody that has an issue regarding this, let me know. I'll put it on their agenda. They talk about it. They're great at brainstorming solutions and opportunities for improvement. So yeah, just let me know and we can get you on an agenda. I'm just going to do this real quick. So here's their website. You can also go to the website and look at their upcoming agendas, who the makeup is, look at minutes from past meetings. Again, you can get this from meridiancity.org. Agendas and minutes. If you want to know who's there, here's their information, what we do. I'm going to touch on this with our top 10, but one of their charges is coming up with priorities for the city. So here's last year's priorities for roadways, intersections, and community programs, projects, sidewalks largely. That's one of their main charges, is coming up with that. But again, more information there. But contact me if you have a transportation-related issue. Again, can we solve it? A lot of times we can't. Police department is also part of that team. They're an ex officio member, so we have someone from traffic, Meridian Police Traffic, come to those on a regular basis as well. So here's the top 10 non-ACHD. So not Eagle Road, not Chinden, not the interstate, not Highway 69. These are the top 10 that we sent to ACHD last year as most needed projects. I'm not going to spend too much time on this map, but there were 60-some priorities, I believe. Anyway, so you can see roadways and intersections. Here are the top ones. Again, I'm not going to read the list to you. You can look at it. But they're kind of all over, north and south, east and west. Locust Grove is now becoming more and more of a priority, moving up over time. Seem to be getting more and more concerned about Locust Grove, just sort of as an aside. Seems to be moving up. Then ITD priorities, so same type of thing. The Chinden Boulevard is our current top priority. 10 Mile was one previously, and then obviously working on the Meridian Road interchange, Eagle Road before that. So our 2026, again, so Linder Road, overpass, I got an asterisk there because that's going to have to be a joint project between the state, ITD, and ACHD. It's not on the state system, so it goes over the interstate system, but the air rights, it's got to be coordinated with ITD. So about a $12 million project, so there's a little bit of I don't want to call it a steering contest, but a little bit of the state doesn't need it for their network, right? They're moving people on the interstate just fine. But it helps the local network if we can get another overpass there, because then you can take some of the traffic off of 10 Mile and Meridian Road. So a little bit of a what does that partnership look like kind of going on there? And there's a bunch of priorities. So where does this play out when sort of neither one of them are wanting to take full ownership on it? I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, just saying that's a little bit of what the dynamic looks like. State Highway 16, I've got a little bit more on that too, but a phased-in plan. Over time, it never planned that way. Obviously, it stops right now at 2026, but moving that all the way to I-84 and then opening up that corridor for more development. There is $6 million that was programmed this year by the ITD board to design, particularly get the interchanges and overpasses there done. So at Ustick and McMillan, Franklin and I-84, get those designed so that we're not having to buy homes and businesses in the future if they go in ahead of construction. No plan time for construction of that, but at least getting it designed so we know what to preserve for the right-of-way and not allow encroachments there. And I've got Eagle Road on there still. We are working with Compass largely, but also ITD on making some bicycle and pedestrian improvements for the city. There's a 10-foot wide pathway, but it's disconnected right now. There's pieces of it that are missing, and so we're working as a city. That's one of our top priorities, is to fill in those gaps in the bike and pedestrian infrastructure, including the overpass at I-84 as well on Eagle Road. So again, trying to cruise through this here. 2026, it's important. I think maybe just to highlight a couple of things here. I'll let you read the slide if you're so inclined. But we did push this as the mayor. I can't remember the term she used, fight for projects or whatever. This is one of those. The mayor established a task force a couple years ago, met on a regular basis, tried to put the pressure on ITD, identify funds for widening of Chinden. We're hearing a lot of feedback from businesses and commuters saying it's ridiculous, 2-lane roadway. So we really tried to work with, but also put pressure on the legislature, ITD board, to get that happening. Good news is they do have the first mile of it in the program from Locust Grove to Eagle, but bad news is not until 2021. So they're developing the design of that now, but it's not moving faster. Another good news though, just in the this last year, two developers, you may know this stuff, but two larger developers, one's doing Costco and one that's looking at doing something at Linder and Chinden, have both been in contact and negotiations with ITD to do what they call a STARS agreement. So sales tax anticipated revenue, similar to how the TIF is financed at 10 Mile. Developers go and they widen the roadways, and then they get reimbursed for a majority of that investment through the revenue that they generate to the state's tax commission based on their sales. So they get paid back over time based on the sales tax. So anyways, the one project Costco has actually entered into their agreement to do from basically Linder back to State Highway 16. The other one is pending, but we're hopeful that happens. We don't want this bottleneck in the middle there. So it's phased, and I realize this, you're going to probably be able to make that out. Long story short, it's basically go through the corridor, widen it to 4 lanes, 5 lanes, and then come back and widen the corridor again to 6 eventually. It's overly simplistic, but that's kind of the plan. As warrant meets, go down, and this goes all the way to I-84 in Caldwell, and then double back, widen it to 6. Transit planning real quick. So today, just cut to the chase, there's no fixed line service in Meridian. We're one of the largest in the country to not have a fixed line transit service. We do have inter-county service. So there are 3 routes that come through. They all start in Nampa-Caldwell area, come through Meridian to go to Boise. Again, that's where the jobs are, AM, PM, kind of commuter traffic you can't catch in the middle of the day. It's just in the morning and then in the late afternoon, early evenings. That's what we offer today. We do pay VRT for that service. Harvest is another one that we just started a little over a year and a half ago. There's a partnership with Harvest Church, so that's why it's called the Harvest Service. It is a free transportation service for seniors and persons with disabilities. There's also Dial-A-Ride. Again, it's kind of like Uber for seniors, although it's not on demand. You can't say, oh, I got an appointment in 15 minutes, come pick me up. They are looking for at least 24, 48 hours advance notice, so they can schedule that, and you may be riding with others. It's not going to be a one-on-one type of thing. It's the van you see there, up to 8 people. They usually aren't at 8 people, but it's being used and very successful. Looking at adding a 3rd van actually this next year because it's being used so widely. So, but again, pick out grocery stores, doctor visits, those types of things for seniors and persons with disabilities. So, but in the future, we do envision sometime having a fixed route transportation network. Valley Connect 2.0 is VRT's plan. The board just adopted it in April. The idea is that it's freedom to go where you want, when you want, kind of thing. There's design principles and options. Funding, right, is going to be the big thing. Without getting too much into the details, Idaho is one of 2 states in the nation that really don't have a dedicated funding source to pay for things like this. So your transit system ends up competing with things like police, parks, fire, and so far in Meridian, that hasn't risen to that occasion. We like to be a safe community with nice parks and response times for police. So that's kind of where we're at as a state and even as a region. Boise does have a fixed line service, but they pay $7 to $8 million out of their general fund every year for that service. So again, funding, allowing the city or the voters, the taxpayers, to say, you know what, this is important enough to us, or not, but at least allow the question to be asked, is this something you care about? Yes, we'd like to pay additional half cent or whatever on a sales tax to fund something like this. But again, that's kind of where we're at today, is no funding for it, no dedicated funding source. Goals of the plan, and I encourage you to go to Valley Regional Transit's website if you're so inclined to look at this. But their goals are to have 4 times today's service. What that means is essentially, and I'll go to the last bullet there, 4 times today's service, but increase usage by 800%. Well, the way you can do that is because you make it more frequent. You offer the bus longer times during the day, more frequently, every 15-minute headways, instead of having to wait an hour or 30 minutes. Make it, oh, I just missed it. I don't have to wait an hour. I wait 10 or 15 minutes. So more frequently later and on weekends, and then also investing in some infrastructure so that they can move.